Roblox demos. They aren't very common, but they are out there. I found 3 demos to games that I've never had so much fun playing. These games only have about 2 to 3 hours of content. However, these 2 to 3 hours were by far the greatest 2 to 3 hours I've ever had playing Roblox, and I'm going to tell you about them. So here's how this is going to work. There will be 3 sections to this video. The first section will talk about the game Detriment, the second section will talk about the game Stars Align, and the last section will talk about the game Pandora's Story. In each section, I will talk about what the game is, who made it, and what's in it. I recommend you give all 3 games a shot. So, if you don't want spoilers, you can find the link to the demos in the description. In general, I'll just say what I like and dislike in no particular order based on what I think is important, because at the end of the day, these are still demos and are only showing what is to come in the future. There will be spoilers, you have been warned. Detriment is a platformer game created by Uber Geared Games. The demo was created about 4 years ago, so hopefully the full version comes out soon. This game only has about 5 levels, but those 5 levels are very high quality and a great experience. And remember, this is a demo, so don't expect too much content. So the first thing I want to talk about is the tutorial. This tutorial is pretty good. It teaches you how to play the game in the most fun way possible. It shows you a mechanic and then allows the player to play a small course related to that mechanic, and then after that, it combines all skills the player has learned in one final challenge. It's about a 5-minute tutorial, it's short and it's sweet. This is what a good tutorial should be. Now the first level was also around a 5-minute experience. The level is nice and pretty and the sounds are nice and calming. It's a good first level, however there's one thing that I gotta say is a problem for the rest of the game. At times it is hard to know where you're supposed to go. There was a few times in this level where I thought I was supposed to go one way, but in actuality I had to go a different way. Maybe I'm just not very smart, but a few more arrows dotted around would help. The level's overall good, it's peaceful, and it's just, well, good. The second level is a lot longer. It takes about 10 to 15 minutes if you know where you are going. The difficulty level ramps up quick, and almost too quick. I would argue this is the hardest level compared to the others. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's a fun level. I like the moving platforms and the cyberpunky vibe. It's a hard pivot from the first level. In this level, you're gonna die a lot. If you touch the water at the bottom, ever, you die and you go back to your checkpoint. This feature is everywhere. It certainly makes the game harder. Once again, the problem of where am I supposed to go comes in again. You see, what makes the game take the most amount of time is how you're going to figure out what the game wants you to do. And sure, the game tries. In the second level, you will reach a section where you need to press 4 buttons to open the exit. Each button is given a marker that you can always see. However, in its area, it's almost open world. It's a large room with little to no instruction, just lots of obstacles and an objective. You have to use the obstacles around and find a way to reach the button. The way you do that may not be what the devs want, as you can see in this clip. However, it's still a good level because of its looks and fun gameplay. Okay, now I want to take a detour and talk about the game's story. I'm aware that this is a demo, so this criticism might not be warranted, but I'm going to mention it anyway. Notes can be scattered around the map, especially in the second level. However, these notes are very well hidden. I was only able to find one in this gameplay. Again, just go play the game if you want to get the real experience, and not just me telling you what the story is. Normally, this wouldn't be a big issue, but you'll see why soon. In the next level, things are drastically different. While you're walking in a long hallway, some giant red crystals just start appearing and will kill you if you don't run fast enough. So you see why the story is a little all over the place? In one level, we're in a suburb, now we're in a subway station, and now red crystals are trying to steal your soul. It's just such a hard change. Now, it is possible that this was foreshadowed in the notes, but since they're hidden really well, then most people on their first playthrough, like me, will not notice the notes. Okay, anyway, shortly after this encounter, you meet up with this guy named Merce. Merce is pretty sassy, but I think he's the only guy that gives you more of a complete story. However, you can't rest long because more crystals are showing up and you gotta go. So you and Merce lock each other in a building, and at this point in time, the players introduced to fighting. The fighting is pretty basic, but it does not need to be very complicated for this game because you're not fighting very many things. Some parkour later, and you encounter a boss. The boss is not very good, it's relatively simple. It uses attack here, attack there, and then boom, repeat. Then you just kill him, and then it's off to the last level. In the last level, you encounter an actually good boss. Vance was so much fun. This guy uses a drill and tries to kill you. I just love the opening cutscene. Take a look. Okay, so now you're at the final boss, and he's so fun to fight against. The attacks are smooth and dodgeable, but not too easy, and the difficulty curve is very balanced. After a couple of attacks, he drills into the ground slowly and gives you the opportunity to attack 3 to 4 times. Repeat this process over and over again until he dies. But if only it was that simple. Each wave of attacking then dodging gets progressively harder depending on Vance's health. Towards the end of the fight, the attacks are just like so fun to dodge. The gameplay loop during the boss is so satisfying. He'll kill you a few times, or at the very least get close, but he doesn't make you rage quit and quit early. This is the best kind of boss. After that, the demo ends. So despite this being a demo, there's a lot to talk about. That makes you so excited for the full version. I love the platforming. It never feels old. It never feels too hard or too easy. You just get things just right. Now, of course, it's not perfect. The story doesn't make any sense, and there are visual bugs that make the game a little harder to play. However, no game is perfect, and this is just a demo. So if these problems in the full are fixed in the full version, then this game could be peak. Go play it, enjoy it, and support the devs because Detriment is a top tier game in the making. Stars Align is also a platformer game. The demo officially released about a year and a half ago. This demo is extremely high quality. Out of all of the games that are being covered in this video, Stars Align is by far the most stable. There aren't very many bugs, the gameplay is mostly smooth, and overall, it's just really fun. Unlike Detriment, this game, as of now, does not have a story. It is just 6 levels that you can play, and then there are a couple of collectibles like Stardust for good measure. However, Stardust doesn't do anything, so in the future this should be fixed and have collectibles be used for something more. The good news is that this is planned to be in the full version. So let's talk about the tutorial. Unfortunately, unlike Detriment, there really isn't one. At the beginning of the game, you are told what each item does and the goal of the game. However, you aren't told the instructions for how to control your character, and this is not good but not terrible because it should be an easy fix for the full version. The first four levels are all unique. They all have something special to them. The first level is super short and introduces bombs and basic diving and jumping. It's short, it's sweet, and it's good. The second level has enemies, which weirdly don't ever appear ever again. I know it's a demo, but I really liked the clock people. Next thing. Just like Detriment, it can be hard to know where you have to go in the levels, and in the second level, this problem is pretty bad. Sometimes you think areas are accessible aren't, and things you think aren't accessible are. Players need more guidance, especially in this genre of games. Okay, third level. This level is the first site of increased difficulty. The level is longer, harder to navigate, and a new power-up is introduced, which allows you to jump much higher. Overall, it's a nice level, but nothing crazy. I mean, like, these levels are good, they're polished, and there are sometimes bugs like this. But in general, the levels are bug-free. However, I never really was blown away until the fourth level. The Fractured Citadel was a lot better than other levels. It felt like the level was telling a story, going from the Fractured Isles all the way up to the Citadel itself, and then claiming the star. It's genuinely a hard level, but it's a fun level. This level just adds so many new things like moving platforms, spinning platforms, multiple zones within a level, and it all comes together in one good level. The experience I can't really describe, so just go play the game instead. But once you beat all four levels, you are treated with the last two. At the top of the playground island, the waterworks cage can be found. And down below in the bar, the Forbidden Kingdom can be found. So first let's start off with the waterworks. The waterworks is the second hardest level. If you're looking for a real tough challenge, then this level is for you. The ambient music while playing this is so calming, despite this level is actually hard and actually will get you mad. In general, this game is pretty forgiving, but not this one. If you die, you're going back to the checkpoint, and in this level there are a lot less than what's in the other levels. Unique obstacles in this level, like frog tongue, spinning spikes, make this level just as fresh as the other four levels, except it's almost twice as long, three times as hard, but still just as fun as the other four levels. Now, the Forbidden Kingdom, this level is my favorite one. In this level, just like the Fractured Citadel, you spawn outside of the actual kingdom. Then you have to make your way there through the kingdom and then get the star. Additionally, the player is introduced to a new power, the candy thing. When collected, allows orange platforms to spawn, and it also spawns green and pink platforms depending on when you jump. So when you jump, pink platforms disappear and green platforms appear, and vice versa. This power up is used to its limits, especially once you actually enter the kingdom itself. It's super cool looking, which is fitting for the final level. This level, just like the waterworks, is really hard, except in the Forbidden Kingdom, almost every power up is used. Pretty much, you have to use everything that was introduced in the previous 5 levels to beat this one. The payoff for beating this just feels so good. And that's all 6 levels. Of course, you can talk to various NPCs and just chill in the game, and there are also these astral tiers that when 8 of them are collected, then you get an extra star. However, I don't see why I should get them, because, like, what does that mean? You don't get anything extra other than a filled icon. I'm sure in the full version, the Stardust and Astral tiers will have a better use, so my final thoughts for Stars Align is this. The first 6 levels is an outstanding showing for what this game has in store in the future. Some things still need to be ironed out in the full version, like bugs and the collectible issue. Unfortunately, according to a devlog-ish video, it seems like the full version is not coming out anytime soon because they have no money, which is sad. Pandora's Story is the last section I will be covering in this video. Pandora's Story is a Deltarune Undertale style RPG. This demo was released 3.5 years ago. Pandora's Story is by far the game with the least amount of content, but I still believe it's worth talking about. So let's go through what goes on in this game. So first, the player wakes up in their room and they need to go to school, where their big brother is waiting. I like that you can interact with tons of objects within the house before going outside. After the player heads outside, their big brother says that they can drive, and this is when my first problem arises. When the player enters a car and is told to go to school, the game does not provide a map, so you just have to drive around aimlessly, hoping you encounter the school. And this just isn't good. Just give at least some basic direction, because this minigame completely ruined my experience in the prologue, because it just wasn't good. It was a complete waste of time. However, after you come across the school, then the real fun begins. The door to the school is locked, and the player must explore around to find a way in. This part wasn't as bad as the driving section, but not very good either. Firstly, the world isn't open there. There are defined barriers on where you can and cannot go, and this will railroad you to the direct path that you should go on. And on a side note, this is the section where you learn your brother's name. However, this is only discovered if the player interacts with certain things like the truck or the sign. We learned that the brother's name is Noah. this is not the way to go for a prologue. Just tell the player the brother's name by just including it into the text boxes. Anyway, the player soon finds a path into the forest. The player walks down the path for a bit before a tree falls down and misses the player. Then Noah calls the player and tells him to come back. Once the player comes back, they find Noah sitting on a bench. And this is where we find the player's name. Doesn't matter what you put for your name, because of the story, your name is Rion. Now, I don't think the feature matches too much because it's inspired by Zeltru, so I'll give it a pass. At least the name is openly said in required cutscene. Noah tells Rion that a door just opened suddenly and tells Rion to go in. Rion complies, and now he explores the basement of the school. Now, this is where things get weird. Rion encounters some symbols on the ground, and these symbols come to life and trap him. The symbols start to talk to Rion and say something about the darkness returning or something. Then magical spikes appear and start attacking Rion. But then the weirdest thing happens. One of the spikes misses and hits a pipe, and the pipe starts flowing water, and apparently that is the symbol's weakness, and it dies. This is the most random thing I've ever seen. And reminder, we are still in the prologue, so I have no idea what actually means. But again, it's still a demo, so I'm sure it will be explained later or expanded on in later installments. And then a cave system appears, just out of nowhere. And I get this is a Deltarune inspired game, but it's just so random. At least have the random rooms tell you what's going to happen. Okay, enough rambling and nitpicking, let's get to the good stuff. Rion continues down into the cave system and eventually finds a sword that is lodged in a stone. And after multiple attempts to try to pull out the sword, it finally budges. However, when the sword is pulled, the cavern collapses on top of you. Now, we are finally in Chapter 1. About half of the entire experience is just the prologue, so keep that in mind. Rion falls deeper into the cavern and wakes up in a whole new world. Now, to progress, Rion has to collect these puff sponges to soak up literal waterfalls to keep progressing. And I really like this mechanic. I think it's cool because there are only a certain number of puff sponges in a single area, so you have to think about how to use them to progress, because each puff sponge unlocks a small section that could lead to you getting more puff sponges and solving the puzzle. So it's all about the order in which you use what you have available. There are also these cool little jump pads that launch Rion into the air, so it's pretty cool. I like the puzzles, but there aren't very many of them. This is a short demo, but it's a fun one. Now, after Rion completes the puzzles, he is stalked and then eventually ambushed by a hunter. The hunter explains that a person was supposed to pass through the region in their hour of need, and then the hunter begins to fight Rion. Now, this fight is super cool. It's by far the game's best. Duh. So let's go over the fight itself. Just like an Undertale boss, the moves are predictable. They will be the same each time. The player fights the boss, and the series of attacks are the exact same. And that is not a bad thing. If anything, it's a good thing, because it helps the player learn the attacks and adapt. So when it comes to fighting, I love the fighting mechanic. Instead of a bar that slides across the screen, it's a circle and a point flies around in the middle of a circle. Then the player must press space in the middle of the circle, and the closer the point is to the circle, the more damage it does. I love this feature. It's a unique spin on the fighting mechanic that makes high damage a lot harder, which I quite enjoy. It still doesn't get old, even after the second playthrough. Next up is acting. I'm not gonna lie, it's completely useless. Challenge just makes things harder, and Truce doesn't do anything. It's just not good. But it's a demo, so future fights, so I'm sure it will work. However, the system for getting points to act with is very cool. For every second you survive, you gain some blue points, and for every point of damage you do, you gain a red point. And these points can be spent to do certain actions like challenging or offering a truce. It's a really nice system that I think is very cool and in the future can be utilized really well. Items do exactly what you think they do, so we're going to skip that. Okay, next thing is sparing. Yeah, this is also useless, so I'm going to skip that. Lastly, this is defending. This reduces the damage you take from attacks. It's pretty good in the fight because it's pretty hard. Now, as a first fight, I think it's not very good because it doesn't introduce what really anything does, so you have to figure it out. The second thing is the difficulty of the fight. The fight is pretty hard, so as a first fight, it does not succeed. This could easily be fixed by adding a few fights to introduce the mechanics before giving out the boss. Now let's talk about the actual fight. I can't lie, this fight is the saving grace of this game. It mimics Deltarune quite a lot, but is different enough to still feel unique. The attacks aren't too easy or too hard, and are fun to dodge and strategize. The fight is super fun. It lasts a couple of minutes and then it's done, so the pacing is perfect. Lastly, the hunter himself will talk to you during the fight, just like Undertale and Deltarune characters. This is pretty much the only dialogue that gives more insight into Rion as a character and the world as a whole. Overall, the fight is super enjoyable and worth playing, and suffering the prologue just for that fight is very much worth it. The full version better have the quality like this because this is what makes games good. After the player survives all the hunters' attacks, they are knocked unconscious by these bomb things and they seem to be carried away. And that's the end of the chapter. It's not very long and the prologue is not very good, but I hope the game in the full version will change these bad features and make Pandora's story a more perfect game. Conclusion. All three of these games have something really great about it. Detchment has fun courses that the player can run through along with a great boss at the end of the game. Stars Align has very smooth gameplay and the courses that you play feel very high quality and good looking. And Pandora's Story has excellent combat and good puzzles. But in each of these demos, there are problems that need to be addressed by the time the full version comes out. Detriment needs to work out its story before releasing, Stars Align needs to fix its collectible issue, and Pandora's Story needs to fix its prologue. These issues are seen within the demo, but the good news is that these games are demos, so these issues will be fixed, or at least I hope so. I recommend that you play all these games and will link them in the description. I just hope that the full game is as good as the demos, and not the other way around. Thanks for watching.